Hello and welcome back to my channel, Games with Dick. In this video, I'll review the 36 games I played in the year 2022 in chronological order. I'll keep the reviews as brief as possible and rank them on a tier list. Alright, the first game I played this year was Hades. Hades is a fast-paced roguelike game with an incredible art style. In this game, you play as the son of Hades and you fight your way through challenging arenas that progressively increase in difficulty to escape the underworld. Like most roguelike games, the further you progress, the more experience you gain, and you can use that experience on permanent upgrades that will make future runs a little easier. This game has amazing combat and a great progression system, but I feel like I've played this game a handful of times already. The roguelike genre is pretty oversaturated at this point in my opinion, but when comparing Hades to other indie roguelike games, Hades is one of the greatest. While it doesn't do anything new, it does everything right. This will go into my A tier. Next up, we have Rocket League. Rocket League is a game with a simple concept but a very steep learning curve. In this game, you drive, jump, and boost. But when you start learning the mechanics of the game, you can pull off some really cool looking stunts that require a lot of skill. And that's why I love this game. It's so much fun to see your skills progress and learn new techniques the higher you rank up. This game will also go in the A tier. Finally, Game Freak changes up the formula of the Pokemon series with Legends Arceus. Legends Arceus introduces a quick crafting system, these engaging challenges, and open world exploration. Game Freak tried something different, and in my opinion, it works, but there are still some issues like the frame rate, bugs, lazy cutscenes, boring combat, and empty landscapes. Playing Pokemon Legends Arceus made me feel optimistic about the future of Pokemon games, but I still don't think Legends Arceus is a great game. It's definitely a step in the right direction, but it's just decent in my opinion, so I'm going to go ahead and put it in the C tier. Horizon Forbidden West is one of those games that are pretty good, but could be so much better. The writing, storytelling, and dialogue are awful, but my biggest beef is with the exploration. Horizon Forbidden West has these incredible graphics and landscapes, but the map is painted with icons that tell the player where the points of interest are. So it feels like the game is telling the player where they need to go instead of letting the player have the freedom to explore this wonderful map. Where Horizon Forbidden West really shines though is in the gameplay. Fighting these giant robotic dinosaurs is so much fun, so just for the gameplay alone, I'm going to go ahead and put this into the B tier. Death's Door is another one of those games that doesn't do anything groundbreaking, but it does everything right. The graphics are charming, the characters are funny, the combat isn't overwhelming, the game does get pretty challenging, but punishments are forgiving. There are lots of upgrades and collectibles that require exploration but aren't too cryptic to find. It's not an open world game, but it's also not super linear. Death's Door is also a pretty short game, so I can definitely see some replayability here. I'll go ahead and put this game in the B tier. Nintendo Switch Sports is a scam. Wii Sports was bundled in free with the Wii to showcase the motion controls of the Wiimote 16 years ago. At the time, it was new and exciting. Nintendo Sports is $50 and it doesn't do anything new, and it certainly isn't exciting. This was a bust and belongs in the trash tier. Cyberpunk became a meme when it was released. It definitely wasn't ready for launch, and even though CD Projekt Red has been patching the game up a bunch, people will never forget the state that it was released in. I went into Cyberpunk 2077 with neutral expectations, and I really enjoyed it. The storytelling is seriously one of the best. Compared to most games that give you that illusion of choice, your choices in Cyberpunk actually make a difference. So storytelling, awesome, great job. But the rest of the game is just alright. Like, the combat is cool, but the AI is kind of stupid, and the open world is also kind of boring. In my opinion, there's not a whole lot in the environment that makes me want to explore more than I have to. And yes, this game does have some bugs here and there, but it's really not that bad. The storytelling is so good that none of these minor issues bothered me. So this will go into my A tier. Elden Ring is like a really challenging Breath of the Wild. The game drops you in a huge open world map and lets the player choose their adventure, which makes exploration so much fun. Each section in the game is totally different from the last, and just like every FromSoft game, it's impressive to see how many different enemy designs they have, and they're all animated so well. As far as difficulty goes, it's really hard, but it's not unfair. Memorizing attack patterns and precise timing for attacking, dodging, and blocking is the name of the game. Elden Ring is nearly perfect in my opinion, but my biggest complaint is how cryptic it can be. For a game that lets the player choose their own adventure, I ended up seeking help on the internet more than I wanted to. But at this point, I'm just digging for complaints. Elden Ring is one of the greatest games I've played, and it'll be the first to hit the S tier in this video. Next up is Mario Kart 8. New tracks were released for Mario Kart, so I booted this game up again. The new tracks are great and all, but I really got into the time trials this year. Playing Mario Kart online is fun and all, but it's just way too balanced. You get punished for playing too good. The time trials are all about skill. These time trials are challenging as hell, but you learn from your mistakes until you perfect the track. Mario Kart is great, we already knew that, but if you haven't tried the time trial mode yet, you're missing out. Mario Kart 8 will go into the A tier. Kirby and the Forgotten Land is a game that was made for babies, but it is so good. Like most Nintendo games, the game is as difficult as you want it to be. I ended up 100%ing this game, and there were some pretty challenging moments. The level design is great, there are plenty of collectibles that encourage exploration, and a nice progression system for upgrades that are scattered throughout the world. Kirby Forgotten Land is one of those games that are good for all types of gamers, which is why I'm putting this into the B tier. The next game I played was Cuphead. I've played this game in the past and I've made a whole video on it that's posted on this channel, so I won't be reviewing it again, but this game is a masterpiece and belongs in the S tier. Chrono Cross finally got re-released in 2022 and I was extremely disappointed by the emulation. There is no excuse for a PS1 game to run poorly on new hardware, but the game itself was also pretty disappointing for me. I've played Chrono Cross several times in the past, but I haven't replayed it since its re-release, and it's not as great as I remember. Chrono Trigger has this timeless charm to it, while Chrono Cross now feels like an outdated JRPG that did not age well. I definitely got that dose of nostalgia, but when comparing this to newer RPGs, this game just isn't that good, which is why I'm putting this into the D tier. Sonic Mania is a game that I can appreciate the hell out of, but I just didn't enjoy it. The levels are huge, there are tons of different areas to explore, this game is fast, the graphics are amazing, and the soundtrack is extremely catchy. But for whatever reason, I just did not enjoy playing Sonic Mania. Maybe it's because I didn't grow up playing any of the old Sonic games or something, but I don't know. I really wanted to like this game because it is a great game, but for me, I would say it's just decent and belongs in the C tier. Katamari Damacy is a simple game. You play as a little dude who rolls this ball around to collect literally anything you see in the level. You would think a concept like this would be boring after some time, but the controls, soundtrack, and wackiness of this game make it so addicting and fun. This is definitely a good game, so I'll put it in the B tier. Donut County is kind of like Katamari Damacy, but boring. In Donut County, you control a hole to collect objects. While Katamari has an excellent controller scheme, Donut County feels more like a point and click. This game is about 2 hours long, and it feels like 75% of the game is moving a hole around, and the other 25% is just moving through dialogue. It's funny, but the game plays itself, so not really that much fun. I'd say this game is bad and belongs in the E tier. Next up is Link's Awakening. Link's Awakening is a Game Boy Color game that received a graphical upgrade. There's a lot of charming ideas here, but the gameplay and exploration seem a little outdated to me. This kind of takes me back to those old cryptic Zelda games where you spend more time figuring out what to do than actually progressing the story of the game. The amount of backtracking gets annoying, but once you finally get to those dungeons, that's when the game becomes fun. But overall, I thought this game was just decent, and I'm going to put it in the C tier. Minecraft is as simple as a survival crafting game can get, and I love that. It's extremely approachable for all types of gamers. For the casuals, it's fun to build houses, build a farm, and craft some basic recipes. And for the serious gamers, it's fun to gear up, get into enchantments, and fight some of the more difficult enemies. Minecraft is a good game and belongs in the B tier. Ooblets is a game that only has one thing going for it, and that's cute dancing plant monsters. It's a farm simulator, and these games become so mundane to me after a while. So you start off with a farm, you get some equipment, you plant some crops, you unlock some ooblets, you help the town out by gathering resources, and you do that over and over and over until you get sick of it. Your ooblets can get into these dance battles, but even that gets extremely repetitive after a while. This game was fun at first, but after sucking hours into it, I'd say it's not that good and falls into the D tier. My girlfriend got me an Oculus Quest 2 for my birthday, so these next few reviews are only going to be VR games. But packaged with the Oculus Quest was Beat Saber, and this game is so addicting. It's like the perfect high score / arcade style game for VR. And like Rocket League, it's really fun to see your skills improve over time. Playing this game in VR looks so cool. I feel like a badass slicing all of these blocks, even though I know I look like a fool to everyone else. Beat Saber will go to the A tier. Superhot is a true VR experience. I was always hesitant to get into VR because it seemed like a bunch of traditional games were being thrown into VR. So like, oh, you can play Skyrim in VR now, or Doom VR, or Superhot VR. The issue is, none of these games were developed with VR in mind, so they don't really translate well to VR. Superhot is not one of those games. I would argue that playing this game in VR is the true way to play. Superhot is a great game, and it will go to the A tier. Pistol Whip is another rhythm game for the VR, but instead of slicing blocks with a saber, you're shooting enemies with a gun. Just like Beat Saber, it's more of a high score type of game, but it's not as addicting as Beat Saber. Beat Saber has a list of tracks that all play out differently, while Pistol Whip has a smaller list of tracks with different tempos, so it's like you're either shooting faster or shooting slower. Still a fun experience in VR, just not as addicting and fun as Beat Saber, and for that, I think it falls into the C tier. Job Simulator doesn't really have a whole lot going for it. Sure, it's neat to be in VR and interact with pretty much anything you see on screen, but the whole game just kind of plays itself out. There are 4 jobs: office worker, shop clerk, chef, and mechanic, but it's all basically the same thing. A customer comes in, they ask you to interact with some stuff, and that's basically it. It's a neat VR experience, but I would recommend a handful of other VR games. I'd say this game is bad and belongs in the E tier. Half-Life Alyx is the best game I played in VR so far. The graphics and physics are realistic, making this VR experience feel pretty immersive. While this is a linear game like the rest of the Half-Life series, the game encourages the player to explore and interact with the world by hiding these little resin things everywhere, which adds a really nice progression system. The gunplay is so satisfying here too. Picking up ammo, loading your gun, shooting, taking cover, it all works so well in VR. Again, the best VR game I've played so far, but good God, it's just too much. All the VR games I've played up until this point have been pretty short experiences, and I think that's why I love VR so much. It's a gimmick, and most of the games play well to that gimmick. Playing a full-length game in VR was just a little too overwhelming for me, which is why I'm putting this in the A tier. Next up is Diner Duo. Diner Duo is what they call an asymmetrical VR game. One person plays in VR as a chef, while the other player is taking orders on the PC. Super cool concept and a great way to have a co-op experience with just one VR headset, but that concept wears off pretty fast. It was neat to experience this game for the first time in VR, but just like Job Simulator, it becomes really repetitive after a while, so I'm going to go ahead and put this game in the C tier. Grand Theft Auto 5 is one of those games that I've played and watched a handful of times, but I've just never owned myself. After playing Red Dead 1 and 2 last year, I really wanted to give the story mode in GTA 5 a shot. While GTA 5 does tell a good story, it's a lot more slapstick and wacky than Red Dead. And as far as the gameplay goes, it's about the same. You follow a marker to your destination, you listen to some dialogue, and then blast your way through enemies using auto-aim and a crummy cover system. It's fun, but it gets repetitive after a while. GTA 5 is still a great game though, so I'll go ahead and put it in the A tier. Pokemon Soul Silver used to be my favorite Pokemon game. I still really love this game because it's a huge part of my childhood, but dude, the random encounters and slow turn-based combat, I just cannot do it anymore. It was cool to revisit this game, but I'd be lying if I said I enjoyed it. I love Pokemon, but I also love video games, and as far as video games go, it's just decent, and that's why I'm putting it in the C tier. Golf with Friends is one of those games that isn't good, but it's so much fun playing with friends. This game has plenty of bugs, and for some reason has a lot of performance issues, even though it doesn't even look that great. So even though it is a fun game to play with friends, it's still a trash game and belongs in the trash tier. So one weekend I downloaded 3 random games I could play with my girlfriend. I'm just going to go ahead and breeze through these. Death Squared is a fun puzzle game that had some pretty satisfying solutions, but Overall, it was just decent. Moving Out was super fun at first, but it became extremely repetitive, and it's not that good. And then Totally Reliable Delivery Service was the funniest game of the three, but once we actually tried playing the game, it sucked. Okay, now that we're done with those, let's move on to PlateUp. Earlier in this video, I picked on Hades a little bit for not adding anything new to the oversaturated roguelike genre. The cooking genre is also a little overdone in my opinion, but PlateUp combines both of these ideas and creates something totally unique and addicting. Just like any other roguelike game, you have the option on how you want to start your run. Then you'll receive cards at random after completing a dinner service and random debuffs that make the services a little bit more difficult as you progress. All these random choices you face make one playthrough totally different from the last. You can also play this game with up to 12 friends to add to the chaotic but fun game. Although PlateUp doesn't look like much, it's a good game and it falls into the B tier. Next up we have God of War Ragnarok. God of War 2018 was one of my favorite games, and honestly, God of War Ragnarok doesn't do anything groundbreaking from the last. I know that bothered some people, but hey man, if it ain't broke, why fix it, right? God of War Ragnarok doesn't even do anything groundbreaking for the gaming industry either. It just does everything right. Games like Red Dead Redemption 2 tell an amazing story but lack in gameplay. Games like Horizon Forbidden West lack in storytelling but have amazing gameplay. God of War Ragnarok tells a great story, has amazing animations, a great progression system, beautiful environments that encourage exploration, and some of the best combat of all time. It's truly a masterpiece. At the beginning of this video, I said I'd keep my reviews as brief as possible, and I did not do that for Pokemon Violet because I have a lot I need to say about this game. This game was a major letdown for me. Pokemon's Legends Arceus wasn't a great game, but as far as Pokemon games go, it was ambitious and made me excited about the future of Pokemon. Why did Game Freak try to release a mainline game the same year as Legends Arceus? It's just so stupid. And I could talk about the performance issues for days, but I feel like that's the obvious problem that has been pointed out by everyone at this point. But it's clear to me now that the development time is to blame for this mess. So yes, performance is an issue, but this game is also incredibly boring. Arceus had way more excitement. Collect crafting items with multiple Pokemon, crafting Pokeballs and bait, sneak around, throw bait, wait for an opening, then throw the Pokeball that you created yourself. That's engaging, that's fun. Now let's see how engaging Pokemon Violet is. This is not fun. And the challenges are so weak compared to Arceus. In Legends Arceus, you had these friggin' Dark Soul boss fights that required a bunch of coordination. This is fun. Pushing an olive around for a challenge in the mainline games? This is not fun. It just sucks because this could have been a really good Pokemon game and it isn't. And I know this sounds contradicting because I said Cyberpunk is a great game and we're all aware that it had performance issues and bugs when it was released, but CD Projekt Red has been putting the time into fixing their game. Shit, even The Witcher 3 is still being updated and that game came out almost 8 years ago. Maybe I'm being too pessimistic, but part of me feels like Game Freak won't be putting the time into fixing this game because of their unrealistic development cycles. They're probably already working on pumping out another half-assed game for this year. And going back to Cyberpunk, even though that game does have several issues, there's still a good game in there. Game Freak can fix all the performance issues and bugs, and there still wouldn't be a good game here. So, it's not as good as I wanted it to be. Sorry you had to listen to a grown man complain about a game series made for children, but it's not the worst thing in the world. It just belongs in the D tier. Bayonetta 3 is the first game I played in the Bayonetta series. After playing Nier Automata, I became a huge Platinum Games fanboy. Going back to the graphic I used earlier, Nier Automata had an amazing story and world building, super fast satisfying combat, a nice progression system, a cool art style, music, and dynamic gameplay. Bayonetta 3 has about 2 of these, and that's it. The dynamic gameplay was so cool in Nier Automata, but in Bayonetta 3, it seems like every time Platinum Games wanted to change up the style, it just flops hard. The gameplay is the only thing Bayonetta 3 has going for it, but the gameplay is pretty damn good, which is why I put Bayonetta 3 in the B tier. Crash Insane Trilogy is a remake of the PS1 Crash Bandicoot games. I didn't play these games growing up, but I feel like they did not age well. Modern 3D platformers have way more character and camera control. Controlling Crash with a fixed camera angle in a 3D space just creates a lot of depth perception issues that become very frustrating. When comparing these 3 games to modern platformers, I think it's just decent, which is why I'm going to go ahead and put it in the C tier. The last game I played this year was Acorn Attack of the Squirrels. It's another one of those asymmetrical VR games. The player in VR controls an angry tree, while up to 8 players can join on their smartphones as squirrels. The goal is for the team of squirrels to capture all 4 acorns, while the tree has to stop them. Super simple game, but it's so much fun whether you're playing as a team of squirrels or as the tree in VR just obliterating these little rodents. I put this game in the B tier. And that's my tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments. I already have a queue of games that I want to play this year, so maybe you'll see some of these games in next year's video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next year.